Hello, apostate congregation, and welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. So, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Apostate congregation, thank you for returning. I know a lot of you guys watch these episodes on later times. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So today's topic is we're going to talk about a new Book of Mormon that I found. Now, this was quite a surprise to me when I saw it because it was, it was quite stunning. So if you go to the Library of Congress website, it's called loc.gov. Okay, and if you search, it's the name of the book. The full title of the book is called "The Book of Mormon: An Ancient Account Written by the Hand of Mormon upon Plates Taken from Plates of Nephi." That is the full title of the book. Okay, now if you go and you look at that book, okay, it will have it's full of just characters. There is no English words. There's no language. There's no nothing. It's a complete, entirely made up language. Now on the front page, on the cover page of the, on the index page of the book, right? The table of contents. The table of contents of the book. You can actually see the book on the website, loc.gov, libraryofcongress.gov. And it actually has pictures of this book on there. And so you can click on it and you can see the interpretation of the characters. So it literally has a page that gives you the interpretations of what each character means as far as the English letter is concerned, right? Okay, are you following with me on that? You can actually click on it and look for yourself. You can see it literally for yourself. And you can also scroll through, you can scroll down that thing, and you can literally look at every single one of those pages. And every single page is in those characters. It's quite remarkable. And this is actually a legitimate Book of Mormon. It's a legitimate Book of Mormon at the Library of Congress, loc.gov. The entire name of the book is called The Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi is the full name. Okay, so this book has 471 pages to it. We'll get into the description of the characters here in a few minutes. Guys, I want you to stay all the way to the end because at the end, I'm going to get into Martin Harris, the Anton character papers, and how there's a possible relation to these, to this Book of Mormon. Okay, so it's really a fascinating story. I really encourage people to look into this and take a look at it, right? So, speaking of the character papers, the character paper was Charles Anton, right? Charles Anton took the paper, Martin Harris, if you remember the story correctly, right? Martin Harris, we'll get into this in a second, took the story to Charles Anton to have it authorized, right? Authenticated. Okay, so, again, go look up the title, go look up the book. I just gave you the title a couple times. I'll repeat it again here in a little while. So this book, the Book of Mormon, this new Book of Mormon, I call it the Character Book of Mormon. So the Character Book of Mormon was published in 1869, apostate congregation. 1869. What does that have to do with Charles Anton, right? Okay, well, let's keep going and find out, right? So, published in 1869 by Russell Brothers and the University of Deseret, aka the University of Utah. Now, that's a whole nother episode, podcast. I'm not going to get into the University of Utah, but and the history of that. But it was called the University of Deseret, and they did publish this character Book of Mormon in 1869. So the current owner of the character Book of Mormon is the Library of Congress. They are actually the ones that own that book right now as we speak. So the previous owner was the Smithsonian Institute, right? So, I mean, you got right off the get-go, you got, extremely credible sources right there that are not church-related sources. It's the Smithsonian Institute, okay, and the Library of Congress. I mean, I don't know how to get a better source than that, right? Apostate congregation, are you feeling me on that? So, this book was actually issued by the church, the LDS church at the time, right? So, okay, so there's two sources, the Smithsonian Institute and the Library of Congress, right? So the Library of Congress, okay, well, are there any other sources, you might ask? Yes, there's actually a whole bunch of sources, and I'll give you one more right here in the form of a book where you can read it yourself. So the title of this book is called History of Utah, and it came out in 1889 by H. Bancroft, okay? Bancroft, H. Bancroft. Hubert Howe, I believe, is what HH stands for. So in that book, H. Bancroft's book that came out in 1889 called The History of Utah, if you go to page 712, there's right around 830-ish pages in that book, I want to say. So if you go to page 712, he actually talks about this book, the makings of this book, right? The Book of the character Book of Mormon, right? So I'll read you straight from his book. Okay, it says, at a board of regents, okay, that's the Deseret University, okay, held in the Deseret University, October 1853, okay, Parley P. Pratt, Heber C. Kimball, and George D. Watt, W-A-T-T, were appointed to committee a small book in characters, a small school book in characters found on some new system of orthography, whereby the spelling and pronunciation of the English language might be made uniform and easily acquired. Finally, in December of that same year, okay, 1853, congregation, stay with me on this, characters were adopted under the style called the Deseret Alphabet. Apostate congregation, are you following me here? There's a Book of Mormon at the Library of Congress that is written in the Deseret Alphabet. That's literally what it's called, is the Deseret Alphabet. Now you can go to loc.gov. The name of the book, I've repeated it several times, I'll repeat it again. It's called the Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from the plates of Nephi. You can go to that website and you can look up that book and you can decide for yourself, and you can literally visually see that book. And in 1853 of December, they came up with the characters called the Deseret Alphabet, okay? The Deseret Alphabet. Now you can go to loc.gov, okay? The name of the book is called Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi. That's the name of the book, okay? So, all right, so that's pretty insane, right? Okay, so he goes on to note the Greek sigma is reversed. So he goes on to literally describe to you these characters in this book. And in the book, he actually has that same page that I was telling you about in the beginning, the table of contents that describes how to decipher each letter. H.H. Bancroft actually has that same exact page in his book. Okay, so there's a third reference. You got 3 references now, and there's more, but I mean, 2 of them are pretty profound that I've given you. So, all right. So, anyways, we're gonna keep going on, right? So, H.H. Bancroft continues in his book called The History of Utah that came out in 1889. He goes on to say the omega and the phi symbols are used. He says this is obviously borrowed from the Greeks. Okay, so the point here is they're creating characters. They're creating language, right? Keep Charles Anton in mind and the character page of Martin Harris. Okay, keep these things in mind because in the end, we're going to get to possibly how they might tie together, because we know that the church makes a lot of things up. And so let's keep going and let's find out, guys. Apostate congregation, stay with me, like and subscribe if you haven't already to the channel, and let's continue. So then he says, obviously borrowed from the Greeks. Then he says, same as the plates. Well, that leaves a question mark for me, because what plates is he talking about in 1889 when he's writing this book? Okay, so we know that the words were altered in the Book of Mormon, right? It says all over in the Book of Mormon that the words were altered. We altered the words. In the chapter of Mormon itself, he says we altered the words. We created reformed Egyptian, right? So there's a history of altering things within the church. You feel me? You see what I'm saying, apostate congregation? All right. So again, the website's loc.gov. You can rewind the video for the title of the book. So what are maybe some solutions to those? So we know that the character page, if you look at the character page that Martin Harris had, that he took to Charles Anton supposedly, and Charles Anton deciphered, he didn't decipher them. He authenticated them as some form of other language, possibly Egyptian. Okay. So, but if you look on that page, right, and you start looking at the symbols and stuff like that are on that page, right? Well, if you look up Enochian magic, okay, Enochian magic is the language of the angels, right? And there's a whole nother podcast on this. I do other podcasts. Watch my other videos on these and how it relates to this. Enochian magic, the characters, the language of the angels, right? You can actually Google this stuff, and you can find it right on the front page of anything. Click on images, and this stuff will just pop right up. So, Enochian magic, you're looking for the images of the language, the characters. Alchemaic magic, right? The all of the images on there, right? Yeah, you're looking for those, right? The reason I say these 2 things is because those images on the character page are very, very strikingly similar to some of these symbols. So is the parchment, Joseph Smith parchment papers, right? You could also throw in astrology in there, right? Astronomy, things of this sort, the signs and the symbols of those, right? And those are all in there as well. So it's kind of a hodgepodge. It's not just one of these, right? It's a hodgepodge, because remember, they're creating a book, they're creating a school book, so they're creating pages, right? So how do you, so you have to understand that in the University of Deseret, they're literally commissioned to create these characters, right? So it makes sense to include these, especially when they're so remarkably similar, right? Or the other plausible thing is the whole thing is just literally made up. It's all made up, right? So, which is it? I mean, you got three sources right here telling you that it's literally they're going through and they're trying to figure out how to write this book, right? This Book of Mormon. Okay, if you go to loc.gov, right, it's called, LOC is the Library of Congress, okay, libraryofcongress.gov. It's called Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi. Okay, and you can go on there and you can scroll through that. You can click on it and you can see that is a legitimate Book of Mormon, and that is it. I mean, it's a character Book of Mormon. That's what I call it, is the Book of Mormon of characters, because it relates to the character page of Martin Harris and Charles Anton. And we'll get back into this in a second. So let's continue going on, right? Okay, so like and subscribe if you haven't already. So the Latin and Greek, you have to take into consideration that time, right? Like what was happening at the time, right? So Latin and Greek were very big, at the time of Martin Harris, especially, right? Parley P. Pratt and Heber C. Kimball, they really make me rethink the whole character page, because they're commissioned. I mean, I can't express that enough. The Deseret University, which they are an active part of, that's a whole nother podcast, but you can look them up and go through the foundings of the University of Deseret. And all of those guys are key players. So, all right. So anyway, signs and symbols matter, guys. Apostate congregation, you all know this by now, okay? You've seen enough of my videos that you know that when you get into the sigils, the pentagrams of Jupiter, right? That's when Joseph Smith died, supposedly Joseph Smith died. He had a little talisman in his pocket. There's a parchment paper that he had, right? All of these things have signs and symbols on them, which we just talked about, but these all matter, right? It's the signs. Look up the pentacles of Jupiter and you will see those exact same things, right? And it's called money magic, right? It's actually called Solomonic money magic is what it's called. It's called Solomonic money magic, pentacles of Jupiter. Look it up. And this is what Joseph Smith was practicing, right? So this whole idea of creating characters is in the motif of the entire Mormon story, right? Do you see what I'm saying, apostates? You understand, right? So some examples of this I just gave you, some the pentacles of Jupiter. Look those up. Your garments, you wear garments, right? Those garments are a symbol all in themselves, right? And then they have symbols on the garments, right? And then you have the Book of Mormon itself is a symbol, right? You know that thing you can spot that thing 100 miles away, and you can see those guys coming down the road with their Book of Mormon, their tie, and like they are a symbol. That's a symbol, right? So that's what we're dealing with here. Symbols matter, right? These things matter. So since we're talking about Charles, or the character page, I mean, who is Charles Anton, right? And why would he do something like that? Why would he put himself into a position to forever throughout history be known as the guy that almost authenticated the character page by Martin Harris, right? Why would he put himself in a position like that? Well, if you read the church's account of Charles Anton, he actually, the church says he's an occultist. The church says this. The church says that. They really dragged this guy through the mud, right? Because he did not authenticate the character page. So who is he in real life? Who is Charles Anton? Outside sources are very important here, congregation, because you have to understand that the church has a story and they tell this story, but when you start looking at through outside sources, the church's story just completely falls apart. Like it does not add up. So Charles Anton, okay, we just kind of went over the story in 1828. Okay, that's when Martin Harris took the character page to Charles Anton. Okay, to get authenticated, right? So this is also called the Anton transcript or the character page. Okay, so the story goes he signed the certificate of authenticity, right? Then after Martin Harris told him, right? The story is after he's signed the page, Martin Harris then tells him how an angel of God, okay, revealed the characters to Joseph. And that's when Charles Anton says, "What? No way." And he grabs the paper and he rips it up. And that is in a nutshell the story. Well, you have to say, why would he even do that in the first place? Why would this guy even do that in the first place? Why would he even authenticate that paper in the first place? Look it up and look at it, and you tell me, okay? Let me give you the description of Charles Anton and tell you who he is first, and then go look at that character page. And then you'd also go look at the Book of Mormon, right? The character Book of Mormon, and then you tell me if these things don't relate, right? So we're talking different years apart. We're talking years apart here, guys, right? 1828 versus 1850. What was it? I forget offhand. What was it, guys? Here, I'll tell you here. Just give me 1 second. 1853, guys. Apostate congregation, are you following me on this? Okay. So why would he do this? I mean, who is Charles Anton in the first place? So Charles Anton was born November 19, 1797. He graduated with honors from Columbia in 1815, right? He studied law, okay? He was called to the bar in 1819, okay? But he never actually practiced. That was a curious thing that I found interesting in Charles Anton, is he never actually practiced law. So my point is here, though, is he's no dummy, right? He's no dummy, okay? He's no dummy. Instead, he went back to Columbia to be an assistant professor in Greek and Latin. Are you guys following me on this? Okay. 1830, he becomes full professor in 1830. When was Martin Harris apostate congregation? Martin Harris was in 1828. So in 1830, he becomes a full professor in the translations of Greek and Latin. Just 2 years later, okay? So from 1824 to 1862, he wrote 22 books just on Greek translations, Greek and Latin translations. Okay, this guy is no dummy. He is not going to look at that page. He's not going to look at that character paper and say, "Oh yeah, okay, I think this is some language I've never seen before." Okay, so all throughout the 1800s, okay, this guy's writing books. This guy's literally writing books all throughout the 1800s on Greek and Latin translations. But if you go back to the church's story on this guy, he's an occultist. He's basically this doof that, he means nothing, right? He's just some doofus, right? That, got it wrong, right? The guy's got 22 books. 4 years before he has even met Martin Harris, he has already written books on Greek and Latin translations. Okay, apostate congregation, are you following me? This guy's no doofus. So again, I ask you, why would he put himself in this kind of position? If he's a professor at a college, well, let's put it into context, okay? In 1828, if he's trying to become a full professor at a college, do you think he's going to put his career on the line like this to be made a fool of through all of history? And if you look up Charles Anton, that guy is actually pretty well accredited for his work in today's society, in today's world. Charles Anton's work is actually still talked about. It's still accredited, because you got to remember, the Rosetta Stone is coming out at this time. Things are happening. The Egyptians, the mummies, things are happening, right? So do you really think this guy's going to put himself on the line like that, right? To come out with this thing and say, yes, this is some language I've never seen. The guy's already got books. He's written 22 books. 22 books. He's not a doofus, right? So, why would he put his career on the line? I don't believe this story. I cannot buy this story, okay, that Charles Anton did any sort of authenticating the character page, right? I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. Okay. They're just, I can show you article after article after article of where these guys literally are looked at as hucksters, as shysters. In my last video, they're actually referred to as the ooze of the riverbanks in my last video, right, that I did, a book. You can go back and watch that one, right? So anyways, Charles Anton's a smart guy. He's a credible guy. So why would the church even include this story, right? It's just an embarrassing story for the church. Why would they include the Charles Anton story? Okay, first of all, they did not anticipate the internet. That's a given, right? Okay, so again, I say that the title of the book that I'm specifically talking about tonight, you can go to the Library of Congress. It's called their website. It's called loc.gov. The title of the book is called The Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi. Okay, that's the full title of the book. Now you can click onto that book and you will see that this book, and then if you're just now joining in at the end of this video, I really recommend you going and watching it from the beginning, because I go over all of this and we talk about how, this book is phenomenal, man. It's pretty interesting. You can go and look on it. You can go and look at it, and it literally is, it was published in 1869, okay, by Russell Brothers and the University of Deseret, which is now today called the University of Utah, okay? The current owner of this book is the Library of Congress, okay? The Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi. And that book is written in characters. They're not English characters. The entire book is written that way. And so I'm talking about in this video how it correlates to Martin Harris and the Anton paper, because I truly believe that character paper is most likely the practice page. I think it's one of their practice pages from the Parley P. Pratt and Heber C. Kimball. And for whatever reason, I don't know, because we know what is the history of the church. They don't exactly tell the truth. Okay, apostate congregation, I want you to understand that. So I truly believe that, some of these stories, right? I can't get over it. But you know, that's kind of all I got for tonight. I know this is a shorter video than they usually run, because I really have a hard time putting this kind of stuff together, especially when I don't have slideshows and things like that. Like I want you guys to go and look at this stuff. I want you to, when you're done watching this show, go and look up what I just told you and see for yourself. You can literally scroll through the Library of Congress website there on that book, and you can see there's even a page on there that tells you how to decipher all of the characters. Okay. And they all look remarkably like Enochian magic, angel magic, right? Alchemaic symbols, these signs and symbols, right? And you literally have H. Bancroft telling you about how these things were all made and how they were commissioned and how it was all done. And all of those characters, they all look very strikingly similar, right? So you have to wonder, you know, what's really going on here? What's really happening? So, all right, guys, Apostate Congregation, that's the end of my presentation for tonight. I really recommend everybody going and checking that out, looking at this stuff, and, you know, just question, right? Knowledge is power. Question the stories you've been told, because there is a lot of information out there. And I just want to this is not anti-Mormon material. This is just stuff that I have found, right? I'm not a scholar. I'm just a guy that is interested in history. I really like history, and I really like, you know, I was an LDS member for many, many years. I was born and raised a member. So I already know these stories, right? So now I'm saying, okay, well, here's what the church says. So let's go verify it. Let's go validate it using outside sources. That is very key. That's very, very key. You don't use the church sources to verify church sources. Apostate Congregation, do you follow me on that? You have to look at outside sources. And if you look at these outside sources, at first, when I started doing this, I'll give you a little bit of insight here. When I started doing this, it was impossible to find any kind of outside source, because you Google something and literally 15 pages of LDS.org, LDS this, Mormon that, whatever, right? It all pops up. So you literally just can't find anything, right? So I went to the newspapers. Go to the newspapers. Watch my videos. I talk about books that are of the day, of the time, right? That are talking about these people, this situation, this stuff, right? And none of them are church sources. None of them. We get into the masonry, right? We get into the magic. We get into the just the creation of the Book of Mormon. We get into, is Joseph Smith even actually a real person? Because I have articles, Apostate Congregation, this is going to blow your mind. I literally have newspaper articles. I have several newspaper articles that says Joseph Smith died in 1834. Okay. So then, hold on. In 1842, I have more articles that say Joseph Smith died. Well, wait a minute. I thought he died in 1834. Okay, but hold on. They start calling him names now. In 1834, he was just Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith died, and it actually says in the article how he died. He got his leg amputated, and he died 3 days later. Okay. I actually posted that on one of the ex-Mormon Facebook websites. I can't remember. And I actually have that in my community chats. That article that I'm talking about is actually in my community chats. And when this video is done, I will post the link to the loc.gov. I will post that in my descriptions and also in my community chats. So anyways, but they start calling him names. They start calling him in 1842. He's Joseph Smith, the imposter, because they know that he's not the real Joseph Smith. He's not Joseph Smith, the imposter, is like a false prophet imposter. He's Joseph Smith, the imposter, because Joseph Smith already died in 1834. And there's actually articles that show that are like, well, wait a minute, didn't this guy die like a few years back? Like, isn't this the same guy? Like, he's the prophet of this church. Like, I'm not joking, you guys. You look up these newspaper articles, play with the dates, play with the names, play with the, go to the archives, newspaper archives, right? You can literally get down to the towns. Okay. So, but then in 1844, he dies again. That's a third time. That's 3 deaths. Now he's called Joseph Smith, the imposter prophet, in 1844. Several articles refer to him in these stages. There's 3 different stages. There's Joseph Smith, there's Joseph Smith, the imposter, and there's Joseph Smith, the imposter prophet. Because nobody believes that he is the real Joseph Smith, right? Apostate congregation, I can't make this stuff up. These articles are out there. If you continue watching my videos, I will be doing more videos on these articles. Okay, that are these newspaper articles. I have found some really interesting stuff on Oliver Cowdery, Martin Harris, and David Whitmer. Okay, I have said in previous videos, if you can show me evidence these guys exist, I will stop doing these videos. Well, nobody showed me any evidence, and I found it on my own, so too bad for you. But I have found some evidence, and it's not good evidence. It's actually really good evidence, but for them, it's not good evidence. So, yeah. So I'll be doing videos on those 3 characters, because once again, they do not believe that's their real names, and they say it in the articles. They actually say it in the articles. People who claim to be, they say, right? All right, apostate congregation, I'm just kind of rambling on now. Like and subscribe to the videos. One more time, I will give out the link to the book that I'm talking about here. It's the Library of Congress, loc.gov. Okay, and the name of the book is called Book of Mormon, an ancient account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from plates of Nephi. And you can go and you can look at that book on that website, look up that, search that name, and you will see that book is written in a whole bunch of different characters. That book is also, we'll go back and watch my video and I explain it all. All right, guys, I'm just rambling at this point. Look at those characters, like and subscribe to the channel. Mormon history is not at all what we are told today. It is very, very different, and it has changed. It has changed a lot over time. The stories seem to be, the stories seem to fit whatever situation or circumstance they're in at the time to facilitate or get them out of whatever they're dealing with at that time, right? That's kind of, and if you look at the church today, they literally do the same exact thing. They do the same thing, right? So we have a pattern here, apostate congregation. All right, that's enough for me. I've rambled on enough. So we will see you guys next Sunday at 6 p.m. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do a video on yet next Sunday, because there's literally just so much information that I don't know where to start. I mean, you can do it once you get into these newspaper articles like that, and you start playing around with these names, and apostate congregation, I want you to be aware. The Mormon church used to be called the Church of Christ in its original, right? The Church of Christ. So when you're looking up these newspaper articles, play around with the Church of Christ and see how far back you can go to get those names. And I promise you, you will find some fun stuff. And you also have to delete out of your mind the church story. Take it into account because that's what they say, that's the story they tell. But at the same time, though, you're looking for evidence of that story. So look outside sources, and when you find these sources, you're going to see names like the Campbellites. Okay, well, in Mormon history, we're taught the Campbellites are bad. You're going to see Charles Anton. Mormon history, Charles Anton's bad. You're going to see Nathan Wood. Mormon history, Nathan Wood is a bad. Okay, well, you're going to see these names, right? And they all have something to do with the rise of Mormonism. Like they all play a part. So it's not just one guy, one Joseph Smith guy that created this thing, right? It's this faction over here happened, this over here happened, these two guys over here came together. But my point is the story is nothing at all like we have been told. And for the life of me, I don't know why. Because it's not that big of a deal. The story itself and the cover up is dumber than the actual like creation of the whole thing. If they would just say, yeah, well, this guy from the Campbellites and this guy from the Nathan Wood section, Nathan Wood was actually his group were actually called the Latter-day Saints, right? So you have to take all of this kind of stuff into consideration, right? And it really truly is like a puzzle piece. Like you're just piecing together this puzzle, and you're using this piece, and they have convoluted this story so incredibly massive that it's hard, right? Like I can give you right now off the top of my head, I can give you probably 7 different stories of how Joseph Smith found the golden plates. And that's just based off of newspaper articles of the day. That's no joke. So you, as the apostate congregation, you can decide for yourself which story you want to say is true. Because I can tell you literally probably 7 of them right now. Right now. Everything from white stones to spectacles, to describing what kind of spectacles, to stones in spectacles, to just an angel, to they were just digging a hole. Literally, I mean, you name it. Which one do you want to subscribe to, right? Because they are valid newspapers. But like today, you can say, what do you really believe in the newspaper that you read today? But when you have a whole bunch of newspapers telling you the same story, and they're all borrowing from each other this story, and there's some truth behind it. It may not all be true, but there is some truth behind what they're saying, right? So I have another newspaper article about Oliver Cowdery and Martin Harris, and they tell the story of how somebody found plates, and they tell you the story, but there's no Joseph Smith in the story. And this is literally in 1830. This is no kidding, in 1830 that they're telling you this story. And in the article, it says 3 weeks ago, these 3 people, Martin Harris, Oliver Cowdery, and David Whitmer, came into our neighborhood preaching, right? And they are they're Baptist Methodists, if you can believe that. That's a combination, right? So, you can take this stuff for whatever it's worth, a grain of salt, right? But this is what people are saying at the time, right? And so this is not anti-Mormon. I want to tell you that. This is not anti-Mormon. Now, they are anti the lie. Nobody buys the Joseph Smith story, right? If you go back to my other videos, I actually talk about magazines and stuff where they go and they directly talk to John Taylor, Orson Pratt, And nobody can actually even describe what Joseph Smith looks like. They can't even describe. And you're talking 20 years later. Okay. Well, where were you at on 9/11? Okay. That's what I say. Right. How about that aunt that had a surgery on your ankle 30 years ago? And she still talks about it as if it was yesterday. Right. So let me hear the memory. Let me hear the memory argument about how 50 years later people don't remember, right? We're 20 plus years from 9/11. I remember exactly where I was on that day, what I was doing, who I was talking to, what we were watching on the TV, what was in my drinks. I can tell you, okay? So I don't want to hear this, oh, they had faded memories. Literally everybody's talking about this stuff. Everybody. So, all right, guys, enough. I've said that I'm going to go probably 4 times now, and I'm really going to go this time. I just like talking about this stuff. It's really fun. It's fascinating. I like the Americana aspect of it, because when you get into the history of this stuff, not only are you going into Mormon history, but you're going into American history as well, right? Because you're hearing about all of the religious revivals that are taking place at the time. You're hearing about all of the politics, the masonry, I mean, there's newspaper articles on witches. It's just fun stuff, man. It's great stuff. And so it's not just about Mormon history, right? If you like any kind of history at all, this is a fascinating thing. So yeah, like and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned next Sunday at 6 p.m. and we will talk again. All right, Apostate congregation, I have rambled on long enough. You have better things to do than listen to me. So on a Sunday night. All right. Have fun, congregation, and we will see you next week. Thank you.